your source for news, commentary, discussion, and debate at the intersection of the atheist movement and the LGBT rights movement. This is the Atheist Manifesto. Hello and welcome to the Atheist Manifesto. I am your host, Callie Wright, joined once again by my fabulous co-host, Ari Stillman. What's up, Ari?
My belly button is stinky.
That's, there are solutions for that.
Yeah, I guess I should wash it, but I kind of like the stink, you know? You know how sometimes your own pit stink smells good because it's like a very familiar smell because it's you? Kind of the same thing, I think, with belly button stink. Maybe I'm totally off base here.
No, Ari, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. That's gross, and you're awful.
Well, we knew that, but further confirmation.
No, I'm totally projecting. I get it too, and sometimes I'm comforted by the smell of my own farts, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's like everybody else's poop smells gross, but my poop just smells like my poop. It's not that bad. Unless it's a really, really gross one. Then it smells bad.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about. It's a human experience that everybody has, that everyone says, I am a fellow human and also can relate to what you are saying.
Like, honestly, I have zero, I have nothing to add to that except, like, yeah. So to segue into our super serious, dark and heavy episode topic, I'll just say at the top, we're going to be talking about a lot of the recent conversations surrounding sexual assault, sexual harassment, sexual violence in general. So if you're in a sensitive place and that's a thing that you're not ready to engage with, totally get it. Want to warn you at the top of the episode, that's what we're going to be spending the rest of the time talking about. So there have been several notable instances of this lately. One notably in the atheist community, a fellow podcaster, it was revealed that he's done some pretty creepy, awful, stalkerish, abusive things to not just a few women, but apparently a lot of women. I don't want to make this episode a bash fest on that person in particular, but I feel like the subject itself is worth addressing because we're seeing more and more of this come out. And obviously, I think pretty much anyone who's paying attention already knew how prevalent this stuff was, but it's obviously different when it hits close to home. And I've been struggling a lot because I've had several notable instances lately in my life of men turning out not to be the people I thought they were for one reason or another. Some stories I can't even really talk about because they're things that were shared with me in confidence, that not my story to tell. But I was having a conversation with Celeste about this topic, and she remarked that it seemed to be affecting me a little more than would normally make sense for my proximity to the situation, not being someone who was directly harmed by a specific person. And my first instinct is to be like, well, F you, don't police my feelings. But she was right. She was right because I wasn't the person who was directly hurt in the situation, but I felt like my feelings were a little outsized to that specific situation. And thinking through it, I figured out what was going on. What was going on is that in light of all of this that's been happening lately, basically it's just sort of been chipping away at my sense of safety and security in the world. I take a lot of personal risks with being open about my story and being vulnerable about things that I'm going through. I've never personally been a victim of sexual assault, thankfully. Sexual harassment, certainly, but sexual assault, no. I'm sort of coming to grips with the reality that that's more than just a vague possibility, that something like that is eventually going to happen to me. At this point, I feel like it's almost a near certainty that, Celeste and I aren't strictly monogamous. I'm going to be, seeking out relationships with people of all various gender identities. And I've just been sort of coming to the realization that the more I do that, the more likely it is that something like this is going to happen to me. And I don't know what to do with that. I had this model of the world in my head constructed to where, like, yeah, a lot of the outside world is very unsafe and a lot of the outside world is very scary, but I've carved out this specific corner of the world that I exist in with people that I trust, and I'm safe here. So I can step out and I can take risks and I can be vulnerable, but I've always got this place to come back to that's safe for me to exist in. And more and more people who I thought were part of that circle are turning out to not be the people I thought they were. So for me, it's like, good God, who the fuck is it going to be next? And I kind of don't know how to exist in that world. Just to give you an idea of how dark my thoughts have gotten lately, I legitimately thought to myself, like, okay, I have a vagina now. So if a guy tries to rape me, at least I probably won't get murdered for being trans. And that's me looking on the bright side at the moment. So I've been kind of in a dark place. So what I wanted to talk about in this episode is how the fuck to navigate that world. And I don't know that we'll come out with like solid answers, because I feel like if there was a solid answer, we probably wouldn't need to do the episode. But I think it's an important thing to think through. So, America, Danielle, welcome to the show, friends.
Thank you. Thanks.
So, America, I know you were kind of close to this situation that I referred to at the top of my opening spiel there. And like, how you doing with that?
So I am just, and I feel horrible for feeling this way, but I feel sort of relieved and excited because it was sort of a two-part situation, and the second part was a much bigger continuation of claims that I sort of instigated in the first part. And I kind of felt like, okay, I've started this, nobody believes me, but then I've dragged other people into it because other people were willing to sort of talk about their experience. And then they got so much more hate than I got. I felt horrible and I felt guilty, and it was like, oh, this is my fault. I should have shut up. And if I wouldn't have said anything, they wouldn't be in the bad place they are. And then 2.0 happened, and I was like, oh, people believe us now. And I felt relieved, and I don't want to be happy about it, but it was like, I'm not a liar. People don't think I'm a liar anymore, and people are leaving the original women alone who came out, because they also don't think they're a liar. And it's just, I feel terrible about sort of more positive feelings that we're believed. Because first, I didn't understand why we couldn't be believed in the beginning. And so I'm just, I don't know, I guess kind of relieved that we're not seen as liars and co-conspirators in some grand master plan. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel that. You end up being forced into feeling so many conflicting feelings, and you end up feeling guilty for having any sort of feelings at all, I think. Because there are things that people have, things that are public now that were shared with me in private before. So like, I kind of had to pretend like I didn't know things that I knew. And
right.
it creates this tap dance that you always have to do, because you might get a Facebook message from the person in question, and you have to act like you don't know what you know about that person. So
right.
You have to pretend like everything's all good and be your usual, like, flirty, fun self, sending heart emojis and like, oh yeah, love you too, friend. And that kind of stuff. And so like,
right.
And it's such a heart-wrenching thing when it comes out, because it's very cathartic, I'm sure, for the people involved, but there is such blowback. So it's like anger and happiness and catharsis and relief all at once. And God, yeah, it's just so fucking complicated. Danielle, to bring you into the conversation, I'm curious. I know the experiences that you've had aren't particularly recent ones. Am I right about that?
Right. I'm 29 now. I was molested by a coach at 13, and I was date raped at 21. And those are the only instances of sexual violence that I've experienced. Sexual harassment, like all women know, and some men as well, happens on a near weekly basis.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of these conversations happening too. Like, I mean, how do you navigate those conversations as a survivor? Like, I gotta imagine there's a part of you that feels good, like, oh my gosh, this stuff is coming to light and people are being excised from communities and people are being held to account. But I feel like it's also got to be a constant reminder of all of the bad things that have happened to you. So, I mean, how does that work for you?
I've been through a lot of therapy. I now feel comfortable with my situation. It's something that happened to me, something not that I did. And I feel as a survivor, like I can help other women who want to come forward, but don't necessarily have the confidence yet to speak so openly about it. You know, it's taken a lot of time and a lot of therapy for me to get to this place, but I only hope that by telling my story that I can empower other women to feel comfortable enough to not necessarily tell their story, but to start the conversation.
What about you, America? How are you feeling about just the more general conversation surrounding these issues?
I love that it's happening, and I actually have to say this started because the conversation started because of the election. And I just, we all talked about, okay, we're really upset about the election, the results, and the people that we have in office because of these specific behaviors. And so it is now our duty to make sure that when these things happen, we don't let them slide. And so that's all this was for me, was I had an opportunity to not let something slide, and was upset because in my, adorable Disney kind of brain, I was like, well, obviously everyone's getting on the bandwagon and this conversation is going to be positive and amazing, and we're just going to have really great results. And that didn't happen, and that's fine, but at least I realized that now we're talking about it. And I get that not everyone's going to be on the same side, and it may be hard for some people they may recognize that the conversation needs to happen and want to get there, but can't right now. And that's okay with me, because I just feel like we've done something.
Yeah, I feel that too, because another thing that I think about a lot is that, people are feeling empowered to come forward. And I think that's amazing. And I feel like that's got to put some pressure on people who don't feel safe to come forward. People who still feel like their stories have to be secret for one reason or another because of a certain level of power that their attacker is in, or, something surrounding the situation that's like, oh, well, when this happens, especially nobody believes me, especially nobody believes people when things are like this, when it's, you've previously had a consensual sexual relationship with someone. It's like you pick apart the details of your story, and it's, and obviously people have different capacities. Some people are like, fuck you, this happened, and come at me, bro. But some people aren't there. And I feel like that's got to be hard for people like that too. Is that a thing that you've seen?
In my date rape, it was a situation where I consented to some things and did not consent to others. After the situation happened, I reached out to my best friend. We went to the police. The police actually talked me out of pressing charges because they said it would be my word against his. And at the time, I was 21. I had just been through a really traumatic experience. I didn't feel like I could push the issue. But now, looking at it as a survivor, as part of this growing movement of women who feel empowered to come forward, I feel like I can help other women in this situation who may not feel safe coming forward, or for some reason or another who've been talked out of telling their story, that it's okay. This is absolutely something that happened to you, no matter what somebody else says happened.
In America?
I've definitely seen people feel perhaps safer. Again, the safety in numbers, which makes me incredibly sad because there shouldn't have to be numbers if the first time it happens, we felt like we could come out and say, hey, this is a thing that happened. But I've definitely seen people feel more comfortable and perhaps not telling all of their stories and not telling some of the more traumatic, but this is a thing that happened to me, and it's a start. And I like that.
And I'm curious about coping. And this is maybe a selfish question because, I don't want to speak from the perspective of someone who is a survivor. Like, I've experienced sexual harassment. I feel like every woman has probably, or anyone who's perceived as a woman, or and lots of men too. I'm personally just having trouble like existing and just acting like everything's normal. Just knowing that these things are happening to lots of people, especially lots of people I care about, and that it's likely to happen to me. And I kind of had this realization. I was at a conference and I just caught myself like, instead of enjoying the conversation that I was a part of, I always kind of had my head on a swivel. It's like, okay, I know who the men in the room to avoid are. I don't know who knows that these are men to be avoided. So I have to watch, and like anyone who I can warn away from these specific men, I've got to like, if I see him pairing off, I'd like send a quick Facebook message like, hey, be careful, blah, 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 and a lot of times I can't say anything more than that because the story that I know about that person is something that was shared with me in confidence, not my story to tell. So I can't even say why. Just say, hey, be careful around him. He's somebody to watch. And I just thought to myself, because, I used to feel very othered in society. Like, I used to get a lot of weird looks, a lot of weird stares, some rude comments. And I just always interpreted that as like, oh, people are clocking me as trans and they're grossed out by me, which sucks and is terrible and is hurtful. And talking about feelings that are really fucked up to feel, there is a danger in that, in existing that way, because people will attack you for existing in public. But there is a certain level of safety in that too, because I didn't have to worry about men coming after me to sexually assault me because they were grossed out by me. So it was a really gross kind of safety along with a really gross kind of danger wrapped up into one. And now I sort of feel those tables flipping because I don't get those weird looks or stares or rude comments in public anymore. People don't look at me sideways when I go into public bathrooms. And my interpretation of that is that I'm generally being read as a woman. And so there is a level of safety that comes with that. I'm not going to get clocked as trans, so somebody's not going to just randomly beat the shit out of me for being trans in public. Cool. Glad that's a thing. But I'm trading that for the danger of simply existing in society as a woman. And so my first thing is like, first of all, conservatives, fuck you. Who would choose this existence? And second of all, like, now that I'm here, how the fuck do I deal with that? And so I'm just kind of interested in thoughts, whatever anybody's got.
I mean, it's super heavy and it's super dark, and it's something I know that I've done a lot with therapy on. But you can't live your life being afraid of what might happen. Yes, there's always the danger.
Oh, I beg to differ. I most certainly can.
Yeah, so can I. And that's the reason I've been in therapy for so long. But, my biggest takeaway is you have to be vigilant. You have to keep yourself out of potentially dangerous situations. But at the same time, you can't let that fear dictate your entire life. And I know that is so much easier said than done.
Right.
Yeah.
I struggle with anxiety on a daily basis. So I'm all about, practicing what I preach, because it's not an easy thing to do, but I can't let my fears overwhelm my entire life.
I
hear
really
that.
relate to that. As I haven't experienced any sexual trauma, but I have experienced, long-term psychological and physical abuse by a parent. And, going through that type of life for so long, it really makes you think of the world and other people as dangerous. And something that I've worked on in therapy is realizing that I can't necessarily stop every bad thing from happening to me, but because there are dangerous people out there. There are people out there who are going to hurt you, and there are people out there they're not going to give any warning signs until it's too late. You can't necessarily protect yourself from everything, but just knowing that you'll be able to survive that because of the strength and the coping skills that you've been able to build, or because of your support system, which unfortunately not everybody has a great support system, especially in the legal sense. Definitely, there are a lot of different populations that feel that they can't trust the police and they can't trust law enforcement for whatever reason, and that's totally understandable. But I think just trying to focus more, instead of trying to focus on how do I prevent this from happening to me, which of course is a smart thing to do, and you want to do that wherever you can, but you have to also realize that you can't control everything. And you have to realize that you can and will survive when something awful happens to you. It's not going to be fun. It's going to feel awful. But there are people who are going to support you and help you get through it.
America, thoughts?
So I am super outgoing and bubbly, and I have had physical, emotional, and sexual trauma, both from strangers and parents and family. And after I moved to the city that I live in now, I was leaving work at noon, and I work at a 5,000 employee hospital. 2 men tried to kidnap me. And so it was this horrible moment of, I'm now the super bubbly person that wants to go up and talk to everyone, but has these like freakouts because I'm like, well, what if they're dangerous? And it's now like I'm much more quick to shut people down and like get them away from me, because I'm just incredibly open, but I can't tolerate any threats of danger or weirdness or creepiness. And I'm nice enough to be like, hey, this behavior is really unacceptable to me because this is how it's making me feel. And you can either, we can work on this, and, maybe that's just who you are, and I need to understand that. But like, we can't be friends if you continue in a way that makes me not feel safe. And it doesn't make it better, but I live in Arizona where kind of all the weapons are legal. And so I am armed all the time. And so that has made me feel better, because strange men don't want to walk up to a woman in the middle of the night who is brandishing a knife at them now. Even if it's just like, oh, hey, I need a change. And I'm like, yeah, don't knock on my fucking window at night and it's dark. What the hell's wrong with you? And so I don't know, I guess I've become more just like aggressive and not letting people anywhere near me if for any reason I feel unsafe, not okay.
I think that's legit. I think there's lots of valuable stuff in there. And what I had kind of come down to, and I was kind of having a mini freak out, like I don't know where the line is between like, I'm kind of freaking out, or like, oh, I'm actually having an anxiety attack. Like there's a blurry line there. But I mean, I was ruminating pretty hard on all of this. And I kind of came to the conclusion, it was like, well, you know what? Like, sure enough, chances are there are going to be other people who I have let really close to me who are going to turn out to be terrible people. And I might find out they're terrible people because they do something bad to me. But that's not going to be everyone in my social circles, for sure. And I am going to have people that I can fall back on to love and support me. And the second piece of that, Ari, which I think is the super valuable thing that you contributed, because I didn't even, in my head, I didn't even go that far. It's like, well, you know what? Like, even if something shitty does happen, chances are you're going to survive it. You're going to get through it. It may take therapy, it may take medication, it may take a monumental effort, but you can come out on the end of it and be okay. And I think that's probably where most of my comfort has come from, is just like, yeah, shitty things are going to happen, but I've survived shitty things. I haven't survived things that are that shitty, but like at scale, I'm sure I'll end up okay on the other side, I guess. And I don't know, I guess it's kind of messed up that that's what we have to think, but I guess that's where we're at, huh?
It's true though. You can survive a lot more than you think. And it's not something I would ever wish anybody to go through, but the people that I have talked to who have been through it can all look back and say, yeah, I'm a survivor. I am okay. Okay is relative. Okay
Right.
takes time. Right. Okay takes therapy. Like you said, okay takes medication in most cases. But I can honestly say, I'm 8 years removed from my rape, and I am okay. I am okay.
And looking forward, I mean, what do we want to see from this? Because I definitely feel, I mean, just as a woman, not as a survivor, because like I said, I've not experienced sexual violence, but I feel empowered to like speak up and demand things of people when it comes to respecting boundaries, when it comes to respecting consent, and when it comes to saying, well, here's what you need to do to fix this shit. And recent conversations surrounding that have left me feeling more empowered. And I had a situation the other day where somebody said something to me that I felt was kind of inappropriate. And I probably spent a half hour, 45 minutes gaslighting myself. Like, I'm overreacting. What's wrong with me that I'm feeling this way? And I don't know that had I not seen the strength of other women coming forward to talk about not just these experiences, but to even just stand up to people who are doing things that are inappropriate. Not even necessarily sexual harassment or assault, but just like inappropriate comments or, that made me uncomfortable, that kind of thing. And I felt empowered to say, gosh, you know what? That actually did make me feel kind of weird that you said that to me. And I'm kind of not okay with that. And that was progress, like feeling that I was able to assert myself in that way. And that feels powerful. And so I'm wondering, from anyone here, I mean, what do we want to see moving forward?
I absolutely demand that my close group of friends, of which I consider all of you, I demand that we hold others accountable. And I know it's super hard, but even if it's, hey, that made me uncomfortable, right? Like, I don't need anyone pitchforks and torches burning the village down. But I've been in situations where someone who, in every other aspect of life, I've seen them hold people accountable, let something terrible slide. And I was heartbroken because in every other aspect, I know that they hold people accountable, but they said, well, no, because it's too hard. And I was like, oh, okay. And I just want us to hold people accountable, even if that made me uncomfortable. We obviously don't have to go to the extremes of it, but just kind of saying something is kind of what I need from those in my circle.
Yeah, I totally get that. I don't think we're going to solve the toxic masculinity problem right here, right now. That's going to take a major societal shift that I'm not entirely sure that this country as a whole is ready for. But I think people need to realize that there are a lot of reasons why women don't come forward right away. And I was one of them. And the guilt and the shame was the overwhelming feelings that were preventing me from coming forward with my story. And, you know, I think we've all made the mistake of looking at Facebook comments on, you know, a news site's post.
Jesus, yeah.
About, yeah. And you see,
Don't read the comments.
I torture myself and I do read the comments, and you see where people don't understand why women take so long to come forward with these stories. You know, we're not doing it for the publicity. We're doing it because we're ashamed. We feel guilty. I'm sure every survivor at some point in their healing process has blamed themselves for what happened. And I know I did. And I know that's not healthy. And I know that's not true. But we've all been there. And I think as a whole, as a society, we need to start understanding that rape survivors need to be treated as survivors. You know, this is not something that we're making up for fun. We're not doing it to get politicians out of office. You know, this is not something that women do as a sport, which a lot of people unfortunately still believe is a thing.
Yeah, I mean, how fucked up is it that you even have to say that?
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's horrible.
And it most certainly does have to be said, but like, Jesus, come on.
I left my liberal gun group discussion because in the discussion of, you know, the Senator Franken who's come under fire, the thread was just this sort of dismissal of what happened, because apparently it was just some way to, I don't know, it was a crazy political conspiracy is what it turned into. And it was like, no, he did something wrong. Yes, it's obviously not as bad as someone else, but that doesn't mean that whatever punishment happens, whether he quits his job or he goes through an ethics committee or he goes to jail, it doesn't mean those things are political assassinations. It's what should happen when you put your hands on other people who don't. And I was just devastated that, because, and again, this is me living in Disneyland. I just assume sort of if you have a non-religious belief or if you have a political leaning, that you will think a certain way, because unfortunately a lot of people in my circle do. Obviously I have people that challenge me, but for the most part on the big issues, we kind of all have the same thought process. And so I was just shocked that what should have been obvious, yes, we're sad he quit. Yes, he was an amazing senator. Sure, he should have gone through the ethics committee. But it's a lot of people to lay hands on that didn't ask for it. No, this isn't some political chess game. It's just what happens when you hurt others.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally like saying, well, I shouldn't have to answer for punching you in the face because this other guy killed somebody.
Right.
Like, fuck off with that bullshit. Like, I have kept my mouth shut on Facebook about a lot of that, because when I tried, I had so many apologists fucking screaming into the comments like hero worship is a hell of a drug. I'm just gonna fucking say it. Hero worship is a hell of a drug. And the thing is, like, on a more personal scale, so many of the people who have turned out to do this are people who are popular, people who have a platform, people who are activists, people who are well loved and well liked. And I just keep thinking, if one of those guys did it to me, every one of you motherfuckers would be saying that about me.
Right.
And that means you're not my friend.
I've noticed it a lot with Joe Biden. You know, a lot of us have
Uncle
seen
Joe.
the videos of him being touchy and clearly making women uncomfortable, and people try to apologize away. You know, he's Uncle Joe and he has that persona, but what he was doing is not okay. No, it's not rape, but he was obviously making people uncomfortable, and it's not okay.
And the thing that makes me so fucking angry is like the people who are the people who are making these criticisms, not fucking once did I see them make any sort of equivalence between what he did and what, say, for example, Roy Moore has done. Because they are not the same thing. Any reasonable person realizes, of fucking course, touching someone inappropriately is not the same thing as having sex with teenage girls or seeking out sex with teenage girls. Obviously not the same thing. No one's fucking saying that it is. He still did wrong. He still needs to be held to account for that. End of story.
I mean, he doesn't need to go to jail, but he needs to be held accountable. And just because he's liberal, just because people like him, I mean, I like him as a politician, but what he did is still not okay.
Exactly.
And at this point, like, if she did come out to ruin his career, okay.
Yeah.
You
know
win.
what I mean? Like, you've done a thing that means that you don't deserve to have a political office.
Right.
The fact that us finding out about it as poorly timed doesn't change that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is so cathartic for me. I really hope I really hope that we don't get a lot of hate mail over this. I'm sure we might. I don't know.
Let me answer it. I enjoy cussing folks out, Callie. You let me answer every bit. That's kind of what I've become, and I think that's another way in which I cope is because I have a lot of anger. And that may never go away because a lot of the people that hurt me died before I felt like I got a resolution. And so now I feel like, because I'm not a believer, there's not that, oh, well, at least I know they're a bad person or going to hell. No, it's, oh, they were a bad person and they died and now I'm alive and I never get to like punch them in the face, right?
Yep.
So there's a lot of that anger in me. And I love being able to be like this sword and shield for other people. Because I don't have any social anxiety and I'm not an introvert and I don't have kids or a husband that I have to worry about. And so I get this immense pleasure just being able, and I've been punched in the face by a dude. I have no issues having that happen again. I will cuss you out until I am blue in the face. If you need that, I got you.
Have I told you lately how much I love you with all of my heart? Because good Lord, I do.
And I can really appreciate that because I have severe social anxiety, which is a direct result of the things that I've been through. And I'm not angry. I'm a very non-confrontational person. So for me to sit here and hear that you're willing to fight just gives me so much hope that there are people out there like us that are willing to give this the attention that it needs, in all different capacities.
Being able to fight when others can't, because again, I get that people are in very vulnerable situations. That's the only reason I did it was because there's not a thing. You can't threaten my career. You can't threaten my family. You've got to threaten me. And if you threaten me, by all means, go ahead. We will take this to the death. So, yeah, that's the only reason I did it is because I know that I can be in that place when other people can't.
Mm-hmm. And it's appreciated coming from somebody who can't, not because I'm afraid of them hurting me or my husband or anything, just that I can't because of who I am and my own anxieties. Yeah. I can't fight.
I keep thinking back to this thing that I saw. I think it was on Imgur, however the hell you say it. And it was a picture of this guy wearing one of those ridiculous horse masks, dancing around making fun of people at the Westboro Baptist Church. And and he was talking about, it was basically like why I show up to counter protest the Westboro Baptist Church, because up until this point, I had very much been one of those people that was like, if you show up to counter protest, you're giving them the attention they want. And I was pretty much on board with that. And this guy was like, yeah, okay, so imagine you're a queer kid. You just figured out that you're queer. You're just figuring out how hostile a place the world can be to you. And you're driving down the street after school and you see all of those people saying, God hates fags, you deserve to go to hell, you know, sodomy is sin, all of this sort of stuff. And you see no one standing up in opposition to that. What message does that send to you? And so in my mind, that's why it's important to speak up and do things like that. Because when bad things happen, I think so much comfort can be drawn from just knowing that other people give a shit. And that's, you know, to tie it back into what we were talking about earlier, you know, I think just seeing that people care. I want to give a shout out. I'll just use your first name, Colleen. Last night, it was either last night or the night before, I was really, really struggling pretty hard with all of this. And I was just kind of going through the motions. I was pretty down, wasn't really feeling motivated to do much of anything. And I went to the grocery store to get a couple of things. And I happened to pick up my phone as I left the grocery store. As I sat down in my car, I checked my phone real quick before I pulled away. And she had sent me this voice message. Just, you know, I appreciate what you do. You know, you exude love, you love people, and you make people feel good about themselves. And it was just like, I'm going to start crying now. At this like particular time in the world and that particular time and where I was at, it was exactly the thing that I needed. There was nothing in that message that like solved the world's problems, because we know that's not realistic. We know that's not going to happen. But it was a reminder that somebody gives a shit. Somebody cares. And that, you know, in this particular case, is someone who is touched by what we do on the show. And doesn't solve anyone's problems, but it sure as hell made my night better. And
it solved Callie's feeling sad problem.
Right. and what I said back to her was that the gift you have given me is that I'm going to spend the rest of the night thinking about this conversation instead of the awful shit I've been ruminating about all night. And at that point, it was more than enough. And, you know, to kind of repeat the spiel that I give a lot, I think a lot of people get overwhelmed because they think that in order for what you do or say to matter, it has to be this profound, magnificent, amazing solution to these huge and terrible problems. And I think a lot of people forget that, like, sometimes it really is enough to just honestly give a shit and make sure somebody knows that you give a shit and act as such. You know,
until that person inevitably betrays you.
Jesus, sorry.
Wow.
Uplifting show.
Ari is always the ray of sunshine, and that is why I appreciate so much having them on this show.
In college, I got like the most cheerful award, and I was like, nobody here knows me.
Oh, God. I love you, Ari. I want you to know that. I love you dearly. Well, I think that is as good a place as sitting to call it a night on this show. Oh, Jesus. You threw me off. I had lost my script here. That, my friends, is going to do it for this episode of the Gaytheist Manifesto. We are a proud member of the Trans Podcaster Visibility Initiative. We are a group of trans podcasting badasses. We are a group of trans podcasting badasses working to bring more trans voices into podcasting and other content creation. Search for the Trans Podcaster Visibility Initiative on Facebook for more info. You can find the show on Facebook at facebook.com/The Gaytheist Manifesto. You can email us at thegaytheistmanifesto@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter at GaytheistCallie. You can find the show on Twitter at The Gaytheists. And before Ari does their thing, I realized before I started the outro, I forgot to thank our wonderful guests, America and Danielle. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
That's my payback for your derailing earlier. So eat it.
Nom. Now am I allowed to do it?
Yeah. Do your outro, Ari.
Right, go. Hello, I am Friend AI, here to guide you through this virtual reality experience. We want you to enjoy your purchase and to avoid undergoing grievous human bodily harm, so please pay attention as I review the safety protocol. Do not remove helmet abruptly during gameplay, as this may result in retinal damage. Keep your appendages inside the apparatus at all times. Due to high speeds, motion sickness may occur. To alleviate nausea, affix your eyes to the Zac Efron poster, accessible from the pause menu for at least 23 seconds. You may also request to listen to external audio during gameplay to reduce feelings of dissociation and unreality. Open your in-game podcast application to listen to The Cis Are Getting Out of Hand, the #1 most beloved human audio serial. If the application displays an episode of the SJW Circle Jerk, do not select. This is a bug in the system, which may lead to freezing, crashing, and disturbances of memory and sense of self. Our technicians are currently working to resolve the issue. Thank you for your patience. During the virtual reality experience, you may be tempted to engage in risk behaviors which you would normally avoid in your daily life. Be aware that if you die in the game, you die in real life. We would be glad to receive your positive feedback on your positive experience. Send a Facebook friend request to Ari Stillman or email aristillman4@gmail.com to let us know what we are doing right. Thank you for reviewing the safety protocol. To begin gameplay, twist your nipples and utter honk 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 honk.
That was the most amazing thing I've ever heard.
If you want to support the show and the activism we do, head over to patreon.com/The Gaytheist Manifesto and make a donation to support us and what we do. If that is not doable, you can also head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star review. That helps us move up in the rankings and get heard by more people. Before we go, I want you to know that if you're lost, you're hurting, you're scared, if you feel like no one cares and no one understands, you need to know there's a community out here that loves you, cares for you, knows that you're capable of amazing things and that you are worthy of love. If you're struggling, please don't be afraid to reach out. Until next time, friends, this is The Gaytheist Manifesto.